The night was quiet on the alien world. The moons hung heavy in the sky, spilling pale silver light across the forest floor. In the shadows of tall, twisting trees, a young alien girl sat alone inside her small shelter made of broken stone and branches. Her large eyes reflected the dim glow, filled with emotion she could not explain. In her trembling hands lay a thin book, worn and cracked at the edges. It was her diary, her only friend in nights of loneliness. No one else knew she kept it. No one else would ever read the words she wrote. But inside its pages, she dared to tell the truth. That night, she dipped her quill in dark ink and pressed it to the page. Her hand shook as she began to write. "This is the night I saw him, the human." Her words began softly, but her heart raced. She remembered every detail, every sound, every heartbeat of that terrifying encounter. The first time she had heard him, it was only footsteps, slow, careful, heavy against the ground. At first, she thought it was one of the wild beasts that roamed near the river. She hid in the shadows, clutching her thin blanket around her. Her body was tense, her ears straining to catch every sound. Then she saw him. Not a beast, not like the stories told in the village. The figure that appeared between the trees was strange, tall and broad-shouldered. His body was covered in strange cloth that clung to his frame. His skin, too pale under the moonlight, did not look like hers. His eyes glowed faintly as they reflected the moon, and when his breath escaped into the night air, it was steady, calm, and chilling at the same time. She froze. Her diary described it in shaky lines. "I wanted to run, but my legs would not move. My heart screamed danger, yet my eyes would not look away. I thought the elders were right. Humans were monsters, yet he did not look like a monster. He looked alive, different, too different." The human stopped only a few steps away. His eyes scanned the clearing, and for a moment she thought he had seen her. Her hands shook as she held her breath. She pressed herself against the rough stone wall of her shelter, her body trembling like a frightened child. Then he turned his head, slowly, as if listening to something only he could hear. His voice broke the silence, not loud, not angry, but deep and low, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. She could not understand the words. They were strange sounds, unfamiliar. Yet the tone was not harsh. It was soft, almost gentle, like the way mothers once sang to their children before sleep. Her diary spilled the truth. "I was afraid." Yet that voice did not sound like a beast. It sounded like something I wanted to hear again. My body shook, but my heart leaned toward him. I did not know why. As he stepped closer, the moonlight touched his face more clearly. His jaw was sharp, his features strong, his eyes sharp like a predator, yet calm like flowing water. Something about him made her chest tighten. She wanted to scream, to run, to call for help, but her voice died in her throat. Instead, she watched. She wrote with ink-stained fingers. When he looked toward me, I thought my soul would leap out of my chest. His eyes did not burn like fire. They carried something else, something I cannot name. It made me want to hide, but also to stay. Her hand slowed as she wrote the next line, because the memory that haunted her was not only fear, it was something far stranger, something she had never felt before. She remembered the heat rushing to her face, the way her skin tingled even though he had not touched her. Her body betrayed her. Fear twisted into something else, something forbidden. Her diary captured her confusion. Why did my hands feel weak? Why did my breath grow heavy? Why did I feel both terrified and alive? My people warned me that humans destroy, that they take and break. But when I looked at him, I felt something waking inside me, something I could not fight. The human had paused near the edge of her shelter. He tilted his head, his eyes scanning the ground as though searching for tracks. For a long, tense moment, she thought he would find her. Her heart beat so loudly she was sure he could hear it. But then he stepped back. He looked at the sky, muttered a few strange words to himself, and slowly turned away. She remained frozen, until the sound of his footsteps faded into the distance. Only then did she breathe again, her chest rising and falling like waves crashing against the shore. Her hand gripped her diary tightly as she wrote, "He left me alive. He did not harm me. He did not even try. But I do not know if this is mercy or something worse. I am afraid, because I want to see him again. Her quill scratched the final words of that entry. Her eyes, wide with fear and something more dangerous, stared at the ink as it dried. She pressed the diary shut, clutching it against her chest. The silence of her shelter, her breath echoed loudly in her ears. She closed her eyes, but the humans faced those sharp eyes. That strange voice would not leave her mind. For the first time in her life, she felt torn between terror and desire. And so the alien girl's diary remained locked with a secret. Only she knew that her first encounter with a human had not only terrified her, it had awakened something she could not control. The diary's next pages began with ink darker and heavier, as if the alien girl's hands had pressed harder while writing. The fear she carried that night had not faded with time. It had grown, spreading through her like roots of a poisonous plant, she wrote. Even after he left, I could still hear his footsteps in my mind. Every shadow moved like him. Every whisper of the wind sounded like his breath. I could not sleep. My body was still trembling. The forest outside her small shelter was restless that night. The leaves rustled as if hiding secrets. Creatures screeched in the distance, its call stretching through the trees like a warning. But no sound frightened her more than the echo of memory, his voice. Strange, deep, almost soft, yet impossible to forget. She had been raised her whole life to believe that humans were killers. Her elders told tales of fire and blood, of strange creatures who destroyed worlds and left nothing alive. And yet the one she had seen did not raise a weapon. He did not roar or strike. He only stood there, breathing, looking, whispering. Words she did not understand, and that confused her more than anything else. Her diary scratched with hurried words. Monsters, I could understand. Monsters, I could run from. But he was not like a monster. He was something else, something worse. Because I could not decide whether to fear him or follow him. That night she wrapped herself in her blanket, but it gave no comfort. The air felt heavy, thick with something she could not name. Her body shook, not from the cold, but from the memory of his eyes. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him again. Tall, broad, silent, yet strangely calm. And every time she saw him, she felt that same burning heat inside her chest, crawling into her throat, making her lips tremble. Why? Why had he left her alive? Why had he looked at her like that, like she was not just a creature in the dark, but something he wanted to understand? The pages turned darker as her words became almost desperate. I thought of leaving the shelter. I thought of running to the village and never returning. But something held me back. Something chained me to this place. I was afraid that if I left, I would never see him again. And then came the shadows. Sometime after midnight, when the moons had climbed higher, she heard something moving outside. Slow, deliberate steps against the soil. Her body stiffened, breath caught in her throat. Was it him again? She pressed her back against the stone wall, clutching the diary to her chest as though it could protect her. Her wide eyes stared at the cracks of moonlight slipping into the shelter, waiting for a figure to appear. The footsteps grew louder, her heart raced, faster than before, beating like a drum inside her chest. Every step felt heavier, closer, until the sound was just outside her thin wall of branches and stones. She whispered to herself, "Not again. Please, not again." But the sound stopped. Silence, so deep that her ears rang with the absence of noise. Her trembling hands reached for a small stone knife she kept hidden under her blanket. Her people always said, "If you see a human, strike first, or you will not live long enough to strike at all." She held the knife close to her chest, the sharp edge cold against her palm. Her mind screamed to prepare for death. Then she heard it, not a human's voice this time, not words, but a low growl, a beast. A predator had come to her shelter, sniffing around the stones, its breath heavy and wet. She could hear the scrape of its claws against the ground, the faint rumble in its throat. Her body froze again, but this time it was not confusion. It was survival. Her diary line grew sharp. The beast was outside my wall. I could smell its hunger, It wanted me. It wanted my flesh. I knew I could not fight it. I was too weak, too small. The growl deepened, and then suddenly, the creature let out a piercing cry, cut short as if struck. The girl gasped. Another sound followed fast movement. Heavy impact, the sharp snap of branches breaking. She pressed her hands over her ears, her eyes wide with terror. Something was happening outside. Something violent. And then, silence again. The growl was gone. The beast was gone. She dared not move. Her heart raced as she wondered. Had the human returned? Did he kill the beast? Was he standing out there now, watching her shelter, deciding what to do with her? She pressed her diary close and wrote quickly, "I should be grateful. Something saved me. But why do I believe it was him? Why do I believe? The human killed the beast and left again, without showing himself? Why does he protect me when he should want me dead?" Her hands trembled so much that ink smeared across the page. She was terrified. But inside that terror, something else coiled and twisted, stronger with every moment. A dangerous thought whispered, inside her heart. If it was him, I want to see him again. She leaned against the wall of her shelter, staring at the moonlight outside. Her chest rose and fell as she imagined the human standing in the shadows. Silent, watching. And though her body still shook with fear, a strange longing burned brighter than before. Her diary closed with one last trembling confession. The shadows. Do not frighten me anymore. What frightens me is how much I want them to hide him. What frightens me is not the human's presence, but the thought of him never returning. The next entry in the diary began with uneven lines, as though the alien girl had written quickly, almost breathlessly, without stopping to think. The ink spilled in places, forming dark spots on the thin page. She wrote, "Something is wrong. With me, I do not understand what is happening to my body. My heart does not listen to my mind anymore." Even after the night of the beast's death, she could not find peace. She should have thanked the moons for survival. But instead, she carried an unfamiliar fire inside her, one that made her restless, uneasy, and strangely alive. Her elders had told her many things about humans, that they were cruel, they broke whatever they touched, that they carried only hunger and violence in their hearts. And yet the memory of that human lingered, not like a nightmare, but like a forbidden dream. She pressed her quill harder, almost tearing the page. When I think of him, I cannot breathe properly. My chest feels heavy, yet my skin feels light. My hands shake, but my lips grow warm. This is not fear, at least not the kind of fear I know. She remembered how his eyes had searched the darkness, how his voice had filled the air with a low hum of strange words. She replayed it over and over, like a song she could not stop hearing. But what confused her most was how her body reacted. Her hands would grow clammy, her breath short. A heat spread from her stomach to her face, leaving her trembling without reason, even her tail long and usually stilt-witched against the ground when she thought of him. Why was this happening? Odd, she recalled an old lesson whispered among the girls of her kind, a secret they were told not to speak aloud. They had called it the awakening, a stage when body and mind no longer obeyed reason, a stage when one longed for closeness even with danger. Her diary trembled with the truth. Is this what I feel now? Is this the awakening they warned me about? And if it is, why does it come for me? Because of him, a human? She pressed her hand to her chest that night, feeling her heart drum like war music. The more she fought it, the stronger it grew. Her breath would hitch without warning. Her dreams, once empty and cold, now burned with flashes of his face, his eyes, his steady hands. She woke sweating, clutching her blanket as though it could hide her shame, and still, she wanted more. One evening, as the red glow of dusk filled the forest, she caught herself tracing circles on her wrist, remembering where his hand had almost touched her. She remembered that warmth, that strange calm, and it sent shivers racing down her spine. Her words on the page turned desperate. I am terrified of what this means. I am terrified because I do not hate it. I am terrified because I want it again. How can something so frightening feel so good? That confusion weighed on her more heavily than fear itself. It's monsters she could fight, darkness she could hide from. But this storm inside her body, this burning that would not stop, could not fight it, and worse, she did not want to. As days passed, she grew distant from her own people. Whenever voices from the village echoed through the trees, she hid deeper in her shelter, clutching her diary instead of joining them. How could she explain what was happening? If anyone found out, they would call her cursed, perhaps even exile her. Humans were the enemy. To feel anything else for them was betrayal. Yet her own heart betrayed her every day. Her quill scratched furiously. I try to imagine him as a beast, as a monster like they say. But my memory refuses. I only see those eyes, steady and strange. Pulling me closer, I only hear that voice, low and calm. I only feel this fire, stronger every time I close my eyes. One night, she did something she never thought she would. She stepped outside her shelter and walked to the very place where she had first seen him. The ground was still disturbed where his boots had pressed into the soil. She knelt there, her hands brushing over the faint print. Her breath trembled, her lips parted. And though no one was there, she whispered, "Why did you come? Why do you haunt me?" Silence answered her. Yet it felt as though the forest itself carried his presence. The air smelled different, sharper, almost as if his scent still lingered. Her body reacted instantly, skin prickling, knees weakening, throat tightening. She clutched at her chest, confused by the storm raging inside her. Her diary revealed her shame. I thought I was strong. I thought I was in control. One memory of him steals all my strength. I do not understand why I crave the very thing I should run from. The alien girl tried to resist. She spent hours gathering berries, fetching water, sharpening her knife. She forced herself to focus on survival. But no matter how busy her hands were, her mind always returned to him. Every crack of branches, every shift of shadows, every breath of wind, she hoped it was him returning, and every time it was not, her heart ached with disappointment. Her diary entry ended with words nearly too heavy to admit. I am no longer afraid of him hurting me. What I fear most is that he will never appear again. My body waits for him. My soul waits for him. And that frightens me more than any beast. At night, she pressed her diary shut, her face buried in her blanket. Her tears were silent, but her body shook not from fear of death, but from longing for something she did not dare name. In the shadows of her lonely shelter, she had discovered a truth more terrifying than monsters. Her first encounter with a human had not just left her shaken, it had awakened her. And now, no matter how hard she tried, her body and soul would not forget him. The diary's next pages were slower, the words written carefully this time. It was as if the alien girl herself had stopped many times while writing, her thoughts too heavy to spill easily onto paper. The ink carried hesitation, but also something. "Else something dangerous?" she began. "I swore I would never let him near me. I promised myself I would stay hidden. But that night, he came closer, and I let him." It happened 2 nights after the beast had been killed outside her shelter. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet, as though it too was waiting for something. The moons cast long shadows, and she had tried to calm herself by writing again, but before she could finish her thoughts, she heard those footsteps again. Her heart jumped. She knew them now. They were heavy, steady, not like the scurrying of animals. They belonged to him, in the human. She clutched her diary to her chest, frozen in place. Part of her wanted to hide. Another part, much stronger, wanted to see him. Again, even if it meant danger. She pressed her back against the stone wall, listening. His steps grew louder, closer, until she could almost feel the ground tremble. And then, silence. She dared to lift her head. Through a gap in her shelter, she saw him. He stood there, only a few steps away, the moonlight washing over his strange form. His broad shoulders seemed even larger now. His face was half hidden by shadow, but his eyes, those eyes she could never forget, were fixed on her. Her breath caught. He had found her. Her diary scratched the memory. With sharp strokes, I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my body betrayed me again. I did not move. I only stared at him, as though waiting for what he would do. The human stepped closer, slowly, carefully, as if he knew she was frightened. He raised one hand, not a weapon. Not a stone, not a blade. Just his hand, open and empty. Her body shook harder. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, but her feet stayed planted. Her heart thundered. Her chest rose and fell too fast. And then, it happened. His hand brushed her arm, her diary's letters bent with emotion. The touch was nothing like I expected. I thought it would burn. I thought it would crush. It was warm, steady, gentle.
Ow.
That single contact sent a wave through her body. Her skin tingled where his fingers had rested. The warmth spread up her shoulder, into her chest, down her spine. Until her knees grew weak, she nearly collapsed, but he steadied her. His hand lingered only for a moment, not forcing, not holding too tightly, just enough for her to feel that. He was real. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She stared at him, wide-eyed, her breath trembling as if she had been struck by lightning. Why? Why did such a small touch unravel her completely? The human said something then, his voice low, calm, almost soothing. She did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. It was not the voice of an enemy, not the voice of a beast. It was the voice of someone. Reassuring her, she trembled as she wrote. My body stopped fighting. My fear turned into something I cannot name. His voice poured into me like water into dry earth. My skin burned, but my heart, it softened. For the first time, she did not feel like prey. She felt seen, and that terrified her even more. Her instincts screamed at her to pull away, to break the contact. But she didn't. Her arm stayed. Where it was, her skin pressed to his, as though her body wanted more. The heat in her chest spread lower, making her shiver. Her throat tightened. Her tail coiled against the ground, betraying her feelings. She was supposed to hate him. She was supposed to fear him. Instead, she felt her body leaning closer, as though pulled by an invisible thread. Her diary confessed the truth. I wanted him to let go. But even more, I wanted him to never let go. For a brief moment, their eyes locked again. She saw no cruelty in his gaze, only curiosity. Perhaps confusion, just like hers. He studied her as though she was not just another creature in the woods, but something rare, something precious, and she could not look away. The world around them seemed to vanish. No beasts, no forest, no wind, just the two of them, connected by one simple, impossible touch. But then, as quickly as it began, it ended. The human slowly withdrew his hand. His eyes lingered on her for a heartbeat longer, then he stepped back. She felt the loss immediately. The warmth faded, replaced by cold air that bit into her skin. Her breath grew shallow, her heart sinking with the absence of his touch. Her diary line trembled. I thought I wanted him gone. But when he pulled away, I wanted to pull him back. My body cried out, though I said nothing. And when he left the clearing, I felt emptier than I ever have. She pressed her palm against her arm where his fingers had touched. Even long after, he had gone. She swore she could still feel the heat lingering there, refusing to fade. That night, she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she relived that moment, the warmth, the voice, the way his eyes had searched hers, and every time she woke, her body longed for it again. Her final words for that entry were small, fragile, almost ashamed. It was only a touch. Only skin against skin, but it changed everything. I am no longer afraid of him like before. I am afraid of myself, afraid of how much I wanted it, afraid of how much I want more. The page ended there, but the silence of her shelter carried. The weight of her thoughts. The alien girl had tasted something she could not forget, something her people would call forbidden. Dangerous? Her heart and body both knew the truth. The first touch of the human had shaken her world. And nothing would ever be the same again. The diary's next pages were filled with careful lines. Not rushed, not trembling, but slow, like someone trying to capture every detail of something unforgettable. She began, "I thought the touch was enough to destroy me, but then he spoke, and the sound of his words has never left me." It had happened after his hand brushed her arm. Her body was still burning with confusion when he stepped back. She thought he would leave again, as he had done before, but this time he did not. He looked at her, his eyes steady, and then his lips parted. The sounds that left his mouth were strange, rough, full of shapes and edges her ears were not used to. She did not understand a single word, and yet understood everything. His voice was low, almost gentle, carrying no threat, no anger. The air around them seemed to soften as the tone wrapped around her like a blanket in the cold night. Her diary confessed, "I had always thought human words would sound like curses, like sharp stones thrown at the soul." But his voice was not sharp. It was deep, steady, calming like the rhythm of waves against the shore. The girl had stared at him, unable to move. Each sound he made pressed against her chest, pulling her in. Her body, already trembling from his touch, now shivered. For another reason, her lips parted slightly, her throat dry, her heart thundering. She could not explain it. How could words she did not even understand make her knees weaken? He took another step closer. The moonlight caught the lines of his face, making his expression clearer. His brows were not lowered in anger, nor lifted in cruelty. They were soft, as though he truly meant to calm her. He spoke again, slower this time. His voice carried like a song hummed by someone who wanted her to listen. She wrote with heavy ink. "I could not understand the meaning, but my heart," it answered. "It told me he was not my enemy. It told me he wanted me safe." And that terrified her. Because what if her heart was wrong? Her people had always warned her, humans deceive. They use their tongues to break you, to trick you, to take what they want. So why did his words feel like the opposite of deception? Why did they feel honest? Why did they feel true? Her hands had gripped her blanket tightly, her claws pressing into the fabric, yet her eyes refused to leave his. Every sound from him made her want to step closer instead of running away. Her diary scratched with emotion. He spoke. And my fear melted into something else, something worse, something I could not stop. My mind whispered to stay away, but my body leaned toward him. I wanted more. At one point, his tone changed. His voice grew deeper, more firm, as though he was giving her a promise. His hand moved to his chest as he spoke, tapping lightly against his heart. She gasped softly, her lips parting. She understood. Not the words, but the meaning. A promise. A vow. Something about that gesture told her he was saying, "You are safe. I will not harm you." And that vow struck her harder than any weapon could. Her diary's next line bled into the page. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe every sound he made. But if I believe him, then everything my people taught me is a lie. And if it is a lie, my world is broken. Her body was caught between two truths, the one she had been taught since childhood, and the one she felt now, standing before him. She should have run. She should have screamed. But instead, she stayed. Her legs, weak as they were, refused to carry her away. Her heart, pounding as it was, refused to let her turn her back. The human finally grew quiet. He lowered his hand from his chest and simply looked at her. The silence between them was heavy, but not unbearable. It felt like something new, something unspoken passing between them. And then, before she could gather her thoughts, he spoke one last time. The words were slow, deep, steady. She still did not understand their meaning, but something about the way his lips formed them, the way his tone curved, made her shiver. It was almost as if he was saying her name, even though he could not know it. Her diary revealed the truth. When he spoke those last words, my heart answered like it had been waiting. I did not know the meaning, but my soul. It felt as if he was calling me, claiming me. He stepped back then, slowly, his gaze never leaving hers. She wanted to reach out, to stop him, to ask him to say more. But her body betrayed her again, frozen in silence, her lips refusing to form words. She could only watch as he turned, as his shadow stretched under the moonlight. As he disappeared into the forest, the night grew quiet. Once more? Yet for her, the silence was louder than any scream. Her diary closed the entry with a final, painful confession. I did not understand his words, but they cut deeper than any blade. I hear them still every time I close my eyes. His voice lives inside me now, echoing in my chest. I am afraid of many things, but what frightens me most is that I do not want to forget them. I do not want to forget him. That night she lay awake, clutching her diary against her chest. The shadows no longer seemed dangerous. The silence no longer seemed lonely, because somewhere out there, the human had spoken to her, and no matter how forbidden, it was she knew she could never ignore his words. The ink on the next page looked darker, heavier. Each word seemed pressed deep into the paper, as if the alien girl had written with trembling hands. Forcing her emotions out even when she wished to hide them, she began, I swore I would not think of him again. I swore I would bury the memory of his voice, his touch. But I cannot, no matter how hard I fight. The thought of him lives inside me. I fear it now has claimed me completely. After that night, her days grew restless. She tried to keep busy fetching water from the river, collecting fruit, repairing her shelter. But every simple task was interrupted by the same haunting images. His eyes, his hand on her arm, the sound of his voice echoing in her chest. The more she tried to forget, the stronger the memories became. When she closed her eyes, she heard him. When she touched her own skin, she remembered his warmth. When the wind blew across her face, she imagined it was his breath. It was torture. Yet she did not want it to stop. Her diary scratched with a guilty hand. I know what this is. It is not fear anymore. It is not just curiosity. It is something dangerous, something forbidden. I long for him. I want to see him again. The thought alone fills me with shame. Her people would never forgive her. To them, humans were beasts, enemies, destroyers. To feel anything else was betrayal. And yet her own heart betrayed her every moment she was awake. At night, she lay in, her blanket whispering to herself, trying to silence the fire inside her. But her body betrayed her, to her breaths growing heavy, her skin flushed, her heart thundering for no reason but the thought of him. She wanted to hate him. But she seemed, one evening, as the crimson sun set behind the trees. She returned to the spot where he had touched her. She knelt on the soil, her fingers brushing the ground as though the earth still remembered his presence. She closed her eyes and whispered softly, Why do you stay inside me? The forest gave no answer, only the cry of a bird far above. But deep inside, she already knew the truth. She didn't want him to let her go. Her diary line grew sharper. I feel alive only when I think of him. The world around me is dull, gray, empty. But the thought of him brings color, warmth, life, and that is why it terrifies me. Because I do not know if I am losing myself or finally finding who I am. That night she dreamt again. She saw herself standing in the moonlight, his shadow approaching. His hand reached for hers, and she did not pull away. Instead, she stepped closer. His voice spoke her name, though he could not know. It tanned her body, shivered with longing. When she woke, her cheeks were wet with tears. Not of fear, but of need, she confessed in her diary. I prayed to the moons to free me of this curse. But the moons were silent. And in their silence I realized, perhaps this is no curse at all. Perhaps this is what it means to feel something deeper than survival. Something more dangerous than fear. Perhaps this is desire.
House.
Her claws trembled as she wrote that word. It was the word her people used in whispers, the word mothers never said before children, the word tied to shame and secrecy. Yet it was the only word that fit, desire. The days stretched long. She would wait near her shelter, watching the forest for any sign of him. Every crack of branches made her heart race. Every flicker of movement in the distance made her hold her breath. But he did not return, and the longer he stayed away, The stronger her longing grew. Her diary admitted the painful truth. I do not fear his return. I fear his absence. I fear that he has already forgotten me, that I was nothing but a shadow he passed by. But to me, he has become everything. One night, the longing broke her. She stepped outside under the silver moons and whispered into the empty forest, her voice trembling, "Come back, please, come back." The wind carried her words, but no one answered. Her knees weakened and she fell to the ground, clutching her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she pressed her hand. Where he had touched her, her diary filled with sorrowful ink. I have become weak. I beg the shadows for his return. I beg the silence to bring me his voice again. My people would call me broken, ruined. And perhaps I am, but I cannot stop. I cannot kill this feeling. She ended the entry with a confession that nearly tore. The paper, I want him. Not his mercy, not his protection. I want him. His eyes, his voice, his touch. I want all of it. I am terrified of this truth, but even more terrified of living without it. That night, the alien girl clutched her diary to her chest, her body trembling not from fear of monsters, but from a forbidden feeling she could no longer deny. The human had awakened something inside her, a dangerous hunger, fragile hope, and a desire her people would never forgive. But in the silence of her lonely shelter, she whispered to herself the truth she could not write on the page. I belong to him already. The last pages of the diary looked different from the rest. Ink marks were heavier, the strokes uneven. It was clear the alien girl had written these lines in tears with shaking hands. Unable to hold back what burned inside her any longer, she began, "This will be my final entry. I can no longer hide what I feel. The truth has consumed me, and I must put it on these pages before it swallows me whole." Days had passed since she last saw him. Each sunrise felt colder, each night longer. She waited for him in the clearing, where he had touched her, but the shadows brought no footsteps, no voice, no warmth. Her life had become a prison of silence. The forest that once gave her comfort now felt empty. The stars above, once shining with hope, now mocked her loneliness. But through all of it, she could not erase him. Her diary whispered her despair. I thought time would kill this fire. Instead it grows. I thought distance would make me forget. Instead, it sharpens every memory. I do not fear him anymore. I fear the world without him. Her people would never accept this. If they ever found her diary, they would destroy it to her. She knew the rules. Too long for a human was to betray her blood, to betray everything she was taught. Yet here she was. Her heart tied not to her people, not to her home, but to thee. One who had terrified her and awakened her in the same night. She admitted on the page, I cannot lie anymore. I want him. I want the human. Not as a memory, not as a shadow. I want him with me. I want him forever. She described the dreams that came to her each night. In them, she saw his face clearer than the moon's. She felt his hand on hers, his arms around her, his voice whispering strange words. She still did not understand, but her heart translated them anyway. In the dreams, the words always meant the same thing, you are mine. And when she woke, her body ached with longing, her chest hollow with need, her diary bled with honesty. If this is madness, then let me be mad. If this is sin, then I have already sinned too deeply. I cannot stop now. No, I do not want to stop. One evening, unable to endure the silence, she made a choice. She stepped out of her shelter, carrying only her diary against her chest. The forest was dark, the air cold, but her heart burned hotter than ever. She walked to the clearing where she had first seen him. The soil still bore faint marks of his presence boot, prints half washed away by rain. She knelt there, pressing her hand to the earth. Come back, she whispered. Her voice shook. Please, come back. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she leaned forward, pressing her forehead to the ground. If you are a monster, she cried, then let me be taken by you. If you are a curse, then let me be cursed. Forever, I cannot live like this. I cannot live without you. Her diary captured her breaking heart. I begged the shadows. I begged to silence. I begged him to hear me, even if he was far away. My body trembled, my soul tore apart. And still no answer came. The forest stayed quiet. The moons only watched. She stayed there until her knees ached, until her voice cracked into silence. Finally, she pressed her diary open on the soil and wrote by moonlight. Her hand shook. But she forced the words, "If I never see him again, then let this be known, I loved him. I loved the human who should have been my enemy. I loved the one who terrified me, who awakened me, who ruined me. And if love is death, then let me die with it in my heart." For the first time, she had used that forbidden word. Love. It stared back at her from the page, dark and final. She traced the letters with her trembling claw, whispering them under her breath. "I love him." She repeated it until the forest itself seemed to echo with her voice. The last lines of the diary were written in smaller, softer words, almost as if she feared the world would hear them. "I do not know if he will ever return. Perhaps I was only a shadow in his journey, a face he will forget by tomorrow. But to me, he is everything. My fear, my fire, my forbidden feeling, my human. If fate is cruel, then let fate be damned. I choose him, even if he never chooses me." The page ended there. The diary closed with dried ink and the weight of a final confession inside her shelter. The alien girl pressed the book to her chest, tears staining her cheeks, her body trembling. For the first time in her life, she was no longer afraid of beasts or darkness or even death. She was only afraid of one thing, never hearing his voice again. And yet, as she drifted into restless sleep, her lips curved into the smallest, faintest smile, because even if he never returned, she knew her truth. The alien girl, who once feared humans above all else, now whispered to the night, "I belong to him, always."